I'm Amber Wilson, 32 years old and a single mom to Maya and Liam. My phone pinged at 6:43 a.m. One new message. My stomach dropped as I read my mother's words. Don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward. I'll send you pictures. My sister Madison's wedding, the one where Maya was supposed to be the flower girl, the one I'd been saving for. 2 years since I'd seen my family and this is what I got. A text message disinvitation, because apparently we weren't good enough to be there. Before I share how this unfolded, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your family. Trust me, this story might help you feel less alone. Growing up in Wellesley, a wealthy Boston suburb, I always felt like I was living in Madison's shadow. Our home was a beautiful colonial with pristine landscaping that my father Richard insisted on maintaining himself despite being able to afford a gardener. Image was everything in our neighborhood. My mother Elizabeth made sure our family portrayed perfection to the outside world, but behind closed doors, the dynamics were painfully clear. Madison was the golden child. 2 years younger than me, but somehow always light years ahead in our parents' eyes. She was beautiful, accomplished, and seemingly perfect in every way. Straight as, without even trying, captain of the volleyball team homecoming queen. She had this effortless grace that I never possessed. Meanwhile, I was labeled the problem child early on. Creative questioning and rebellious by nature. I struggled academically though. We wouldn't discover my ADHD until I was an adult. Art was my escape. Painting, photography, anything that let me express the emotions I wasn't allowed to voice at home. The favoritism wasn't subtle. For Madison's Sweet 16, my parents rented a yacht in Boston Harbor. There was a professional photographer catering from an upscale restaurant, and Madison received a brand new car with a giant red bow. 2 years earlier, on my 16th birthday, my parents had forgotten entirely. My father was on a business trip, and my mother was busy planning a charity event. When I reminded them the next day, my mother handed me a $100 bill and said, "Get yourself something nice. No party. No acknowledgement." When I won a regional art competition in my junior year, neither of my parents attended the ceremony despite having 2 weeks' notice. My art teacher drove me there and took photos. That same month, they rearranged business meetings and social commitments to attend every single one of Madison's volleyball tournaments, even traveling to other states. Our family vacations were always scheduled around Madison's competitions or social calendar. If I had an art show or poetry reading, it was considered an inconvenience. "Do you really need us there?" my mother would ask. "You know how busy we are." My teenage rebellion was mild by most standards, but in our household it was treated like criminal behavior. I started staying out past curfew, sneaking cigarettes with friends behind the school, having a beer or two at parties. Normal teenage exploration, but my parents acted like I was spiraling into addiction. Meanwhile, Madison's underage drinking at country club events with the right crowd was ignored completely. At 19, I met James while taking classes at a community college. He was 22, working as a mechanic and taking night classes. He had kind eyes and made me laugh. He saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. My parents disapproved immediately. He wasn't from our social circle, didn't have the right pedigree or ambitions. "You could do so much better, Amber," my mother said, during one particularly heated argument. "Why do you always have to choose the most difficult path?" I was 22 when I got pregnant with Maya. James and I hadn't planned it, but we were in love and decided to make it work. When I told my parents, my mother cried as if I'd announced a terminal illness rather than a grandchild. My father simply asked, "What about college? What about your future?" As though motherhood and a future were mutually exclusive. We had a rushed wedding at City Hall. My parents attended, but seemed more concerned about who might see them there than celebrating with us. Madison was studying abroad and conveniently couldn't make it back. I later found out she was actually home that weekend, but attending a sorority sister's engagement party instead. Liam came along when Maya was 2. By then, James and I were struggling. He was working longer hours, coming home exhausted and increasingly distant. I was overwhelmed with 2 young children, and trying to freelance as a photographer to help with expenses. When Liam was 18 months old, I discovered James was having an affair with his coworker. Text messages, hotel receipts, the cliché evidence of betrayal. Our marriage imploded spectacularly. At 28, I found myself divorced and raising 2 children essentially alone. During this period, my parents' response was to suggest that perhaps I didn't try hard enough to make my marriage work. My father actually said James seemed like a decent guy. What did you do to push him away? The betrayal of those words still stings years later. Throughout my divorce, Madison sent regular updates about her perfect life. Her promotion at the investment firm, where she worked her luxury condo, purchased her European vacations with Bradley, her equally successful boyfriend. Each message felt like salt in my wounds, especially since she rarely asked how her niece and nephew were doing. Rebuilding my life as a single mom was the hardest thing I've ever done. I moved from Massachusetts to a small town in Pennsylvania where housing was affordable. I found work as a photographer at a portrait studio while building my freelance business on the side. Every day was a juggling act between childcare work and trying to create some semblance of stability for Maya and Liam. My parents rarely visited their grandchildren. When they did, it was brief and awkward. My mother would make subtle comments about my small apartment or the children's behavior. Maya seems quite wild. Did you ever consider having her evaluated? Or I notice Liam still uses a pacifier. Aren't you concerned about his dental development? Never just enjoying their grandchildren, always finding something to criticize. Phone calls dwindled to major holidays and occasional updates. I tried to maintain the relationship for my kids' sake, sending photos and having them make birthday cards for their grandparents. The response was usually a polite thank you text or a check in the mail instead of a phone call. Despite everything, I worked hard to not badmouth my family to my children. Grandma and Grandpa are very busy. I'd explain when months passed without contact. They love you, but they're not good at showing it. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I wanted to shield Maya and Liam from the pain of knowing they were an afterthought. By the time Madison announced her engagement to Bradley 6 months ago, I had created a life I was proud of. My photography business was steadily growing, the kids were thriving in school, and we had a small but supportive community of friends. We weren't rich by any means, but we were happy. I had stopped measuring my worth by my family's approval, most days anyway. Madison's engagement came as no surprise. She and Bradley had been dating for 3 years, and he checked all the boxes my parents could want in a son-in-law Harvard Business School, graduate executive at a prestigious finance firm, family money, summer home in Martha's Vineyard. Their engagement announcement appeared in the Boston Globe with a professional photo that looked straight out of a magazine. What did surprise me was Madison's phone call the day after the announcement. "Amber, I'm engaged," she squealed through the phone as if we spoke regularly rather than 3 or 4 times a year. "Congratulations," I said sincerely. Despite our complicated relationship, I wanted my sister to be happy. "Bradley seems great from what you've told me." "He is. You'll love him," Madison continued. "The wedding's going to be next June at the Ocean View Estate. Mom's already gone into full planning mode." I laughed softly, imagining my mother with her color-coded binders and vendor spreadsheets. Some things never changed. Actually, Madison's voice shifted to a more serious tone. "That's why I'm calling. I want you to be my maid of honor." The request left me momentarily speechless. After years of distance and indifference, this felt like an olive branch I hadn't expected. "Wow, Madison. I'm honored, truly. But are you sure? We haven't exactly been close, and there's Diana and Jessica from your sorority, who—" "Don't be silly," she interrupted. "You're my sister. Of course it should be you. And I want Maya to be the flower girl. Liam can be the ring bearer. It'll be perfect." A warmth spread through my chest. Hope that perhaps this wedding could be the beginning of healing our fractured family. "The kids will be thrilled," I said already, imagining Maya's excitement about a pretty dress and Liam's proud strut down the aisle. After we hung up, I did some quick mental calculations about the costs involved. Travel to Boston Hotel for 3 nights, minimum new outfits for the kids' bridesmaid, dressmaid of honor, gift, and so on. It would be tight, but I could pick up extra photography sessions and put aside a little each month. This was important. When I told Maya and Liam they'd be in Aunt Madison's wedding, their excitement was contagious. Maya immediately started practicing flower tossing techniques with scraps of colored paper. Liam, though less clear on his duties, was equally enthusiastic about his important job. Their joy made the financial strain worth it. The first dress-fitting trip to Boston came 2 months later. I drove 4 hours with both kids, dropping them with a friend of a friend who'd agreed to watch them for the afternoon. The bridal salon was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected. Champagne flutes, plush white seating, and saleswomen who somehow made their sizing questions feel like judgments. My mother arrived 20 minutes late, air-kissing my cheek without actually making contact. "Amber, you look healthy," she said, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. I knew what she meant. I'd gained weight since having children and hadn't lost it all. Madison arrived soon after with her 2 friends from college, Diana and Jessica, who were also bridesmaids. The afternoon progressed with Madison trying on designer gowns that cost more than my annual rent. When it came time to look at bridesmaid dresses, my mother immediately vetoed my preference for an A-line style. No, that won't work with the silhouette we're creating," she insisted. "The mermaid cut is much more elegant." The dress they selected was stunning, but designed for someone with Madison's willowy frame, not my curvier post-baby body. When I emerged from the dressing room feeling self-conscious, Diana whispered something to Jessica that made them both giggle. Madison silenced them with a look but didn't defend me. "We can have it tailored," my mother said dismissively. "A good foundation garment will help too." The price tag for the dress was $700, significantly more than I'd budgeted. When I quietly mentioned this to Madison, she frowned. "It's just one day, Amber. Everyone else can afford it." I swallowed my pride and nodded, mentally rearranging my finances for the next few months. Fewer groceries, no new winter boots for me, delay the car maintenance a bit longer. As we were leaving the salon, I overheard my mother talking to Madison near the restrooms, not realizing I was within earshot. "Are you sure about having Amber stand up with you? It's going to be awkward with the Prestons and Whitfields there." "You know how people talk." "Mom, she's my sister," Madison replied, though her tone lacked conviction. "I know, dear, but her situation is rather embarrassing. Single mother struggling financially. It reflects on the family." I slipped away before they could see me, stomach churning with hurt and anger. Later that evening, I called my father, hoping for some support or perspective. "Dad, I don't think Mom wants me in the wedding," I said after exchanging pleasantries. My father sighed heavily. "You know how your mother gets about appearances. Just go along with things. It's easier for everyone." "Easier for everyone, or easier for you?" I challenged. "Amber, please. I'm trying to keep the peace here. Madison wants you there. Just try not to rock the boat for once." His words confirmed what I'd always known. Keeping up appearances would always matter more than my feelings. Still, I was determined to make this work. For my kids. For the possibility of healing old wounds. The next blow came during a conference call with the wedding planner, Madison, and my mother. As they discussed the processional order, the planner asked about the flower girl and ring bearer. "Oh, we're going with the Kavanaugh twins now," my mother interjected smoothly. "Madison's goddaughter and her brother. They're 8 much more reliable than younger children." What I broke in. "Madison, you asked Maya and Liam to be in the wedding. They're so excited about it." An uncomfortable silence followed before Madison cleared her throat. "We're going with a more sophisticated theme now. The planner thinks it's better to have slightly older children who can follow directions properly." "My children can follow directions," I said, my voice tight with anger. "You could have discussed this with me before making the decision." "It's my wedding," Amber Madison replied coldly. "Things change. The kids can still attend as guests." Later that night, I had to break the news to Maya and Liam. Maya's face crumpled in disappointment, but I practiced throwing flowers every day, she whispered. Liam, picking up on the mood, began to cry without fully understanding why. Their heartbreak was far worse than any slight I'd felt personally. I called Madison that night after the kids were asleep. "You hurt them," I said simply. "They're children, Madison. Your niece and nephew who adore their Aunt Maddie even though they barely know her." "I'm sorry they're disappointed," Madison replied, not sounding sorry at all. "But this wedding is costing a fortune, and everything needs to be perfect." "Perfect for who, the Prestons and the Whitfields?" I asked, recalling my mother's words. Madison's sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair," I replied. "But I'm still trying to make it work because you're my sister and family is supposed to matter." After a tense silence, Madison softened slightly. "Look, bring the kids to the wedding. Just not in the wedding party. It's a compromise." I agreed, exhausted by the conflict and still holding on to the hope that this experience could somehow bring us closer. That night, I lay awake, wondering if I was being naive to think anything would ever change. With the kids no longer in the wedding party, I had to rethink our entire trip. The hotel Madison had reserved for the wedding party was far too expensive for me, now that I wasn't obligated to stay there. I found a budget hotel 20 minutes from the venue, cringing at the reviews, mentioning thin walls and spotty Wi-Fi, but it was what I could afford. The next challenge was finding childcare during the actual ceremony and reception. Madison had made it clear that while children were technically allowed, the event was not child-friendly. Code for, we don't want kids making noise or running around. Can the kids stay with you and Dad during the ceremony? I asked my mother during our next planning call. They'd love some grandparent time and I could pick them up for the reception dinner. My mother's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. The house will be chaos with people getting ready. Besides, we're not set up for children anymore. Not set up for children. As if her grandchildren were a different species requiring specialized equipment. The guest room that had once been my childhood bedroom now functioned as my mother's home office, while Madison's room remained preserved like a shrine, complete with her high school trophies and college pennants. What about after the ceremony? They could just come for dinner, and the first hour or so of the reception, I'll bring quiet activities for them. Amber, this is a black tie affair at an exclusive venue, not a backyard barbecue, my mother replied. Surely you can find a sitter or bring someone with you to watch them at the hotel. The suggestion to bring a babysitter with me from Pennsylvania to Boston, essentially doubling my expenses, showed how disconnected my mother was from my financial reality. With few options, I reluctantly reached out to Madison about my concerns. I'm trying to make this work, but the costs are adding up. Between the dress, alterations, hotel travel, and now needing to hire a local sitter, I don't know. Madison's response surprised me. I can help with some of it. Bradley and I are doing well, and I want you there. The offer was simultaneously touching and humiliating. I'm not looking for handouts, I said carefully. It's not a handout, it's family helping family. Madison insisted, though her tone suggested she was conferring a great favor. I'll cover the dress and half the hotel. You handle your travel and the sitter. Deal, I agreed, swallowing my pride. The financial help would make the difference between attending and having to decline, though part of me wondered if accepting put me further in their debt, another way I wasn't measuring up to family standards. Over the next few weeks, I arranged time off work, booked our hotel, and found the least expensive rental car option. I even managed to pick up several last-minute photography jobs to pad our travel fund. The kids were still disappointed about not being in the wedding, but excited about the trip itself. Their first time visiting Boston since they were very young. 2 weeks before the wedding, the childcare arrangement I'd spent weeks securing fell through. The sitter, a college student recommended by one of Madison's bridesmaids, texted that she'd forgotten about a summer study program and would be out of town. I spent the next day frantically calling agencies and scouring care websites, but the rates for last-minute professional childcare were astronomical, especially for an all-day event. With mounting desperation, I finally called Madison. The sitter canceled, and I can't find anyone affordable on such short notice, I explained. Would it really be so terrible if the kids came to the reception? They're well-behaved and we'd leave early. Madison's response was explosive. Are you kidding me right now? I've been planning this day for a year, Amber. The reception dinner alone is costing $250 per person. I understand it's expensive, but no, you don't understand, she cut me off. This is the most important day of my life, and I don't need your kids running around or you leaving in the middle of it because they're tired. They wouldn't run around, I defended. They're not wild animals. That's not the point. This is exactly why I didn't want them in the wedding party. Something always goes wrong with you, Amber. Always. It's like you create chaos wherever you go. The accusation stung because it echoed what I'd heard my entire life, that I was somehow fundamentally flawed, always causing problems. That's not fair, I said quietly. I'm trying to find a solution. The solution is to figure it out, without making your problems everyone else's problems for once, Madison snapped. This is why Mom and Dad get so frustrated with you. Everything is always a drama. The conversation devolved from there, with years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Madison brought up my failure of a marriage, my irresponsible life choices, while I countered with her privilege and the family's constant favoritism. You've always been jealous of me, she accused. Even now you're trying to make my wedding about your issues. Jealous? Are you serious? I laughed bitterly. I've spent my entire life being compared to you and found wanting. Even now, I'm bending over backwards to be at your wedding despite being treated like an inconvenience." "Well, maybe you are an inconvenience," Madison shouted before hanging up. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. Maya appeared in the doorway, her small face concerned. "Mommy, why are you crying? Is Aunt Maddie mad?" I quickly wiped my eyes. "Just a little disagreement, sweetie. Grown-up stuff. Everything's okay." But everything wasn't okay. The next morning, I woke to the text message that would finally break the tenuous thread connecting me to my family. "Don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward. I'll send you pictures." It wasn't from Madison, but from my mother. Before I could process it, another message appeared. "Madison is stressed enough without your drama. She deserves a perfect day without having to worry about you making a scene or your children disrupting everything. If you really loved your sister, you would understand this is for the best." I sat on my bed, phone clutched in my shaking hand, feeling as though I'd been physically struck. Despite everything, I never expected to be explicitly uninvited. And by my own mother, not even Madison herself. When I finally gathered the courage to call Madison, it went straight to voicemail. My father at least answered his phone. "Dad, did you know about this? Mom just uninvited me from the wedding by text." His long sigh told me everything. "Your mother thinks it's for the best, Amber. You and Madison aren't getting along, and there's too much tension. Maybe it's better this way." Better for who, I asked, my voice breaking. "For everyone. Madison needs to focus on her day. We'll visit sometime later this summer, see the kids." The empty promise of sometime later that never materializes. How could you let Mom do this? "Amber, please. I'm caught in the middle here." "You've always been caught in the middle, Dad. And you've always chosen their side." After hanging up, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. Years of rejection, of being the family disappointment, of trying and failing to be enough. It all crashed over me in waves. I sobbed until I was empty, curled on my bedroom floor. That's where Maya found me an hour later, her small hand tentatively touching my shoulder. "Mommy, are you sick?" I sat up, trying to compose myself for her sake. "No, sweetie. Just sad." Liam toddled in behind her, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Without a word, he placed it beside me, his way of offering comfort. That small, pure gesture of love broke me all over again. "Why are you so sad?" Maya persisted, her eyes wide with concern. How could I explain to my children that their grandmother didn't want them at a family event, that in the eyes of my family, we weren't good enough to celebrate with them? "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements," I said, finally. "And I just found out we won't be going to Aunt Madison's wedding after all." Maya's face fell. "But what about our special trip?" Looking into my children's confused, disappointed faces, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of seeking approval from people who would never give it suddenly seemed like the most foolish waste of energy. "We're still going to take a special trip," I promised them, an idea forming. "Just somewhere different, somewhere even better." The days following my mother's text were some of the darkest I've experienced since my divorce. I functioned on autopilot, getting the kids to school, going to work, preparing meals, while inside I felt hollowed out. At night, after Maya and Liam were asleep, I'd find myself staring at that text message, reading it over and over, as if the words might somehow rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Every memory of family rejection played on repeat in my mind: birthdays, forgotten accomplishments, ignored criticisms about my appearance, my choices, my parenting. Had I been carrying an idealized version of family in my head all these years? One that had never actually existed? "Why doesn't Grandma want to see us?" Maya asked one morning at breakfast, her perceptiveness catching me off guard. "Is it because I'm not a good flower girl?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You would have been an amazing flower girl. This has nothing to do with you or Liam. Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense. But we're family," she insisted, with the pure logic of a 7-year-old. Family is supposed to be together for important things. How could I explain that family, real family, isn't always defined by blood? That sometimes the people who should love you unconditionally are the ones who hurt you the most? Liam was having nightmares, waking up crying for reasons he couldn't articulate. He'd always been sensitive to emotional undercurrents, and my distress was affecting him even though I tried to hide it. My friend Jenna came over after I missed our weekly coffee meetup, concerned when I didn't respond to her texts. "Jesus, Amber, you look terrible," she said bluntly when I opened the door. What happened? I handed her my phone open to my mother's text. Jenna read it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to fury. What kind of mother says this to her daughter? She demanded. About her own grandchildren. I shrugged, too emotionally drained to defend what couldn't be defended. My mother, apparently. Jenna stayed for hours, making us tea, listening as I poured out years of family history I'd mostly kept to myself. The constant comparison to Madison. The emotional neglect disguised as having high expectations. The subtle and not so subtle ways I was made to feel like the family disappointment. Amber, Jenna said finally, "This isn't normal. This is emotional abuse." "That seems extreme," I protested weakly. "They're not bad people. They just prefer Madison." "Parents aren't supposed to have favorites," Jenna insisted. "And even if they did, they shouldn't make it this obvious. You've spent your whole life trying to earn their approval, and they've spent your whole life moving the goalposts." Her words hit me with the force of revelation. I had been chasing approval, running myself ragged, trying to be worthy of love that should have been freely given. What kind of example am I setting for Maya and Liam? I whispered, the thought suddenly overwhelming. That it's okay to be treated this way, that they should keep trying to please people who constantly reject them. That night, I called Dr. Levine, the therapist who had helped me through my divorce. She squeezed me in for an emergency session the next day. "This rejection has triggered all your childhood wounds," she observed after I'd recounted recent events. "But Amber, consider that your mother's text might be the clearest gift she's ever given you." "A gift?" I repeated incredulously. "How is this hurtful rejection a gift?" "Because it's honest. No more pretending. No more hoping things will be different. Now you can stop pouring energy into a relationship that depletes you and focus on the family you've created. You and those two beautiful children." Dr. Levine helped me see that protecting Maya and Liam from toxic family dynamics wasn't just acceptable, it was good parenting. That sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is create distance from people who hurt us, even when those people are family. "But they're the only grandparents my kids have," I argued. "And what kind of grandparent relationship is it when they rarely see the children criticize them when they do, and explicitly state they don't want them around?" she countered gently. "Sometimes the absence of toxicity is better than its presence." Over the next week, I went through a complex grieving process. Not just for the wedding I wouldn't attend, but for the family relationship I'd always hoped for, but never truly had. I cycled through anger, sadness, and finally, a tentative acceptance. I made a conscious decision not to respond to any family messages. My mother sent a follow-up text 3 days later. "I assume from your silence you understand this is for the best." My father called once, leaving an awkward voicemail about hoping things settle down soon. Madison remained completely silent. I let it all go unanswered. Through social media updates from mutual acquaintances, I confirmed the wedding was still happening as planned. June 18th, the date I'd had marked on my calendar for months, around which I'd arranged work schedules and childcare and budget sacrifices. The date that had represented hope for family reconciliation. As the wedding day approached, I alternated between relief at not having to endure the event and a deep, aching sadness at what it represented. The final severance of an already frayed family connection. The morning of Madison's wedding, I woke with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Despite everything, some part of me still felt I should be there standing beside my sister on her important day. I checked my phone. No messages from any family members, not even a thinking of you text. Maya found me staring out the kitchen window, coffee gone cold in my hands. "Are you sad about the wedding, Mommy?" she asked, climbing onto the chair beside me. "A little," I admitted. "It's okay to feel sad sometimes." She considered this seriously, her small face thoughtful. "We could have our own special day instead." Her suggestion sparked an idea. I'd saved nearly $1,000 for wedding expenses, money that was now freed up. What if instead of sitting home feeling sorry for ourselves, we created a different kind of memory? "How would you and Liam like to go to Wonderland Park today?" I suggested, referring to the amusement park they'd been begging to visit for months. "We could make it a surprise adventure day." Maya's eyes widened. "Really? The one with the big roller coasters? Really? Go wake up your brother and tell him to get dressed for a surprise." Their excitement was infectious as we drove to the amusement park, speculation about our destination filling the car with energetic chatter. When we pulled into the parking lot, both kids erupted in cheers. We spent the day riding every attraction. They were tall enough for eating cotton candy and funnel cakes playing carnival games. I let go of my usual budget constraints and said yes to souvenirs, extra ride tickets, face painting. For one day, I wanted them to feel nothing but joy and abundance. Watching Maya and Liam laugh as they rode the carousel, I felt a weight lifting. In this moment, they were happy. Not wondering why their grandparents didn't want to see them, not trying to understand complicated adult relationships. Just being children loved and secure in the family we had created, the three of us. At sunset, Maya leaned against me as we waited in line for the Ferris wheel. "This was way better than a boring wedding," she declared confidently. "You think so?" I asked. She nodded decisively. "Yep. At weddings, you have to be quiet and wear uncomfortable clothes. And we got to spend the whole day together, just us." Her simple wisdom hit home. Just us wasn't a consolation prize or a lesser alternative. It was exactly right, exactly enough. For the first time since receiving my mother's text, I felt a genuine sense of peace washing over me. We were going to be okay. More than okay. As our Ferris wheel car reached the top, I looked out over the twinkling lights of the park, Maya on one side and Liam on the other. In that suspended moment, I made a promise to myself, and to them I would stop measuring our family's worth by others' approval. We were whole and complete exactly as we were. A week after the wedding, I received a Facebook message that caught me completely off guard. It was from my Aunt Catherine, my father's younger sister who lived in Chicago. We'd always gotten along well at family gatherings, but she wasn't someone I was in regular contact with. "Amber, I'd like to speak with you if possible. Could we arrange a video call this week? It's about the wedding." My stomach clenched. Had my mother recruited family members to tell me what a disappointment I was? Or was this Catherine's attempt at peacemaking? Either way, I wasn't sure I had the emotional energy for another family confrontation. After deliberating for a day, curiosity won out. We scheduled a call for Thursday evening after the kids' bedtime. I answered the video call with trepidation, bracing for judgment or awkward questions. Instead, Catherine's face appeared on screen with an expression of genuine concern. "Amber, I want to start by saying I'm sorry," she began, catching me off guard. "What Elizabeth and Richard did to you was cruel and inexcusable. Not the opening I'd expected. You know about that." "Everyone knows," Catherine confirmed. "Your mother made it clear you weren't welcome, though she told everyone it was mutual. That you'd decided not to come." I laughed bitterly. Typical. "So everyone thinks I abandoned my sister on her wedding day." "Not everyone," Catherine said firmly. "In fact, that's part of why I'm calling. I didn't attend the wedding either. Neither did Uncle Paul and Aunt Susan, or Grandma Elise, or cousins Mark and Jennifer." I stared at the screen in disbelief. "What, why?" "Because we found out how you were treated," Catherine explained. "When Grandma Elise heard you and the children had been explicitly uninvited, she was furious. She called your mother and had what I understand was a very heated conversation. Then she called the rest of us. Several of us decided we couldn't in good conscience attend when you had been treated so poorly." I was speechless. The idea that family members had actually stood up for me, had taken concrete action in solidarity, was completely foreign to my experience. Madison's perfect wedding had quite a few empty seats, Catherine continued with a hint of satisfaction. The family section was noticeably sparse. Your mother had to rearrange the seating chart at the last minute. While I wouldn't wish embarrassment on Madison, there was admittedly a small part of me that felt vindicated knowing the consequences of my exclusion had been visible. "There's more you should know," Catherine said, her expression turning serious. "Things happening behind the scenes that explain some of your parents' behavior, though it certainly doesn't excuse it." She went on to reveal family secrets I'd had no inkling of. "Your father's business has been struggling for years. He made some poor investments before the recession and never really recovered. They've remortgaged the house twice. That Wellesley lifestyle they're so desperate to maintain, they can barely afford it anymore." What? This contradicted everything I'd assumed, but they paid for Madison's wedding at that ridiculous venue. Catherine nodded grimly. "Yes, and it nearly bankrupted them. Your mother convinced your father it was a necessary investment in Madison's future, that marrying into Bradley's family would secure their social position and financial security. Bradley's parents are genuinely wealthy old Boston money. Elizabeth is terrified of them discovering the truth about your parents' finances. Suddenly, my mother's obsession with appearances took on a new dimension. It wasn't just social climbing, it was desperation. And Madison, I asked, is she happy, at least? Catherine's expression said everything before she spoke. Madison and Bradley had a huge fight the night before the wedding. Something about a prenuptial agreement he sprung on her at the last minute. Very restrictive terms. She was crying in the bridal suite most of the morning. I heard from Jennifer, who was helping with the flowers. Did they still get married? I asked, surprised by my concern for the sister who had allowed me to be excluded. They did, Catherine confirmed. But things were tense. Not the fairy tale your mother was hoping to present. I've heard from family friends that they're already in couples counseling. I absorbed this information, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction at Madison's problems, but a strange sense of clarity. The perfect family image I'd been measuring myself against for years was a carefully maintained illusion. I wanted you to know all this because you've spent your life thinking you were the one who didn't measure up, Catherine said gently. But Amber, you're the only one who's built an authentic life. You've faced real challenges and created genuine happiness despite them. I admire that more than you know. Tears welled in my eyes at this unexpected validation. I'd like to be part of your life if you'll let me, Catherine continued. Get to know Maya and Liam. Be the kind of supportive family member you all deserve. I'd like that I managed emotion, making my voice rough. And I'm not the only one. Grandma Elise asks about you and the kids all the time. She's been saving birthday and Christmas gifts for them, even though Elizabeth told her not to send them. The revelation that I had family members who cared about me, who had been thinking of us even when I believed we were forgotten, shook the foundation of my understanding of my place in the family. Would you be open to a visit? Catherine asked. I could come for Thanksgiving, or you could bring the kids to Chicago at Christmas. I have plenty of room. The offer of holiday plans, real family holiday plans without judgment or conditions, was overwhelming in the best possible way. We'd love that, I said sincerely. By the end of our 2-hour conversation, I felt as though I'd discovered family I never knew I had. Catherine shared photos from her phone of the half-empty wedding venue, confirming her account. She also promised to send me contact information for other family members who had expressed concern and support. After we disconnected, I sat in my quiet living room processing everything I'd learned. My family wasn't what I had always believed it to be, both better and worse than I'd understood. There were people who had seen my value all along, even if the voices of disapproval had been louder. For the first time, I felt something beyond hurt or anger toward my parents and Madison. I felt compassion for their desperate clinging to appearances and pity for the emptiness at the core of their seemingly perfect lives. And most surprisingly, I felt grateful. Not for their rejection, but for the clarity it had brought and the authentic connections it was now making possible. 3 months after Madison's wedding, I was arranging a photography display for a local art walk when my phone buzzed with a text from my upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Finley. There's a couple in a black SUV parked outside your apartment. They've been sitting there for 20 minutes. Said they're your parents, but I told them I'd check with you first. I stared at the message in disbelief. My parents were here, in Pennsylvania without warning. It's okay, I texted back. They are my parents. I'll head home now. The entire drive back to my apartment complex, my mind raced with possibilities. Had something happened to Madison? Was someone ill? My parents had never visited without at least a week's notice, if they visited at all. When I pulled into my parking spot, I saw them immediately. My father leaning against their luxury SUV, my mother sitting stiffly in the passenger seat. My father straightened when he saw my car tapping on the window to alert my mother. Amber, my father said awkwardly as I approached, as if we'd run into each other at a grocery store rather than them showing up unannounced at my home. You look well. What's going on? Is everyone okay? I asked, skipping pleasantries. Everyone's fine, my mother said, emerging from the car in an outfit that was ridiculously overdressed for my modest apartment complex. We thought we'd surprise you. See the children? The casual presumption that they could disappear from our lives for months, uninvite us from a family wedding, and then just show up expecting a warm welcome ignited a slow burn of anger in my chest. The kids are at school, I said flatly. They won't be home for another 2 hours. Oh, my mother said, looking genuinely disappointed. We didn't think about school schedules. You didn't think about a lot of things, I replied, before I could stop myself. My father stepped forward, clearly attempting to diffuse the tension. Maybe we could talk inside. It's rather hot out here. I considered refusing, telling them to leave and come back when I'd had time to process their appearance. But curiosity won out. What had prompted this visit? After months of silence, once inside my apartment, my mother immediately began looking around with poorly disguised judgment. My father, at least, made an effort to appear interested rather than critical. "You've made it nice," he offered, gesturing to the gallery wall of family photos I'd created. "What are you doing here?" I asked directly, not sitting down even after they'd settled onto my couch. "The last time we communicated, you made it very clear I wasn't welcome in the family." My mother had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated incredulously. "You literally texted me not to come to the wedding because my children and I would make things awkward." What part of that is unclear? Elizabeth was trying to manage a difficult situation. My father began slipping into his familiar role as mediator. "Stop," I interrupted. "Just stop. I'm not doing this anymore. The diplomatic version where we pretend everything's fine. If you want to be here in my home after months of silence, you need to be honest." Something in my tone must have conveyed my seriousness, because both my parents looked startled. "Madison's having problems with Bradley," my mother said after a pause, changing tactics. "They're arguing constantly. She thinks he might be seeing someone from his office." The irony was almost too much. "So that's why you're here. Madison's marriage is rocky, 3 months in, and you've decided to check in on your backup daughter." "That's not fair," my father protested weakly. "Fair." I laughed without humor. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how you've treated me my entire life. How you've consistently favored Madison, dismissed my accomplishments, criticized my choices, and barely acknowledged my children. Your grandchildren." "We acknowledge them," my mother insisted. "When the birthday cards you send a week late with gift cards, instead of presents you actually put thought into the obligatory Christmas visit that lasts all of 2 hours before you have other commitments. The way you uninvited them from a family wedding because they might disrupt your perfect image." To my shock, my mother's eyes filled with tears. Something I'd seen perhaps 3 times in my entire life. "We never meant to make you feel that way." "Intentions don't matter as much as impact," I said, echoing words from my therapist. "And the impact has been decades of feeling like I'm not good enough, like I'm a disappointment, like my children are an inconvenience." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Amber, we've always wanted the best for you." "No," I corrected him. "You've always wanted me to be what you think is best. There's a difference. You wanted me to follow a path that made sense to you, that fit your vision of success. When I chose differently, you saw it as failure." A heavy silence fell over the room. For perhaps the first time ever, my parents weren't immediately contradicting me or explaining away their behavior. "I know about the financial problems," I said quietly, "and Madison's prenup issues, and the family members who skipped the wedding because of how you treated me." My father's face drained of color. "Catherine," he guessed correctly. "Yes, she's been more of a support in the last few months than you've been in years." My mother abruptly stood and walked to the window, her back to us. When she spoke, her voice was uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Do you have any idea what it's like? The constant scrutiny, the expectations." My mother criticized everything about my parenting. Nothing was ever good enough. The other mothers in Wellesley were always competing. Whose child got into the best schools, whose husband made the most money. She turned back to face me, mascara slightly smudged beneath one eye. "Madison was easy. She did everything right without even trying. But you questioned everything, challenged everything. I didn't know how to handle you." "So you gave up trying?" I asked. "Decided it was easier to focus on the child who made you look good." "I was wrong," she admitted, the words clearly difficult for her. "I've been wrong about a lot of things." The simple acknowledgement, after years of justifications and deflections, rendered me momentarily speechless. My father reached for my mother's hand as she sat back down beside him. "We've made mistakes, Amber. Serious ones. Your mother's parents, well, they were demanding in ways you can't imagine. We repeated patterns we shouldn't have. That explains it," I said carefully. "But it doesn't excuse it. And it doesn't erase the hurt." "No," my mother agreed quietly. "It doesn't." Another silence fell, less tense than before, but heavy with unspoken history. The sound of a key in the lock broke the moment. The door burst open, and Maya ran in, followed by Liam and our neighbor's teenage daughter, who walked them home from the bus stop. "Mommy, I got a gold star on my..." Maya stopped abruptly, noticing the visitors. Liam slowed behind her, instinctively moving closer to his sister. "Grandpa Maya said, uncertainly, looking to me for guidance." "Yes, sweetheart. They came to visit," I confirmed, watching my children's reactions carefully. Maya approached cautiously while Liam remained half hidden behind her. "Are you still mad at us?" she asked bluntly, the directness of childhood cutting through adult pretense. My mother looked stricken. "We were never mad at you, Maya." "But you didn't want us at Aunt Madison's wedding," Maya pressed. "Mommy said you were too busy." I hadn't told them the whole truth, trying to shield them from rejection. But children sense more than we give them credit for. "That was a mistake," my mother said, glancing at me before addressing Maya directly. "A big mistake that Grandma made. I'm very sorry." Maya considered this, her small face serious. "If you're really sorry, you have to try not to do it again. That's what Mommy says." A ghost of a smile crossed my father's face. "Your mommy is right, and we will try very hard not to make that mistake again." Liam, sensing the tension had eased, moved out from behind Maya. "I lost a tooth," he announced, changing subjects with the resilience of a 5-year-old. "The tooth fairy brought me $5. My father got down on one knee, making himself eye level with Liam. $5. That's quite a tooth. May I see where it was?" As Liam proudly displayed his gap-toothed smile, I watched my parents interact with my children. Really interact, perhaps for the first time. They were awkward, clearly unfamiliar with how to relate to young children, but they were trying. It was a start. Later, after the kids had shown off school projects and recent artwork, after promises of a proper visit soon with actual planned activities, my parents prepared to leave. At the door, I spoke quietly so the children now playing in their room couldn't hear. "If you want a relationship with us, all of us, things need to be different. I won't expose my children to the same dynamics I grew up with. I won't let them feel like they're not good enough." "We understand," my father said solemnly. "I hope you do. Because this is the only chance you get. For their sake, not mine." My mother nodded, then hesitated before asking, "Will you come for Thanksgiving? Your grandmother has been asking for you." I thought of Catherine's invitation, the holiday plans we'd already begun making. "Not this year. We have other plans. But maybe Christmas for a day or two." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was a tentative opening, a possibility of a different kind of relationship moving forward. One with boundaries and expectations of respect. Whether they could meet those expectations remained to be seen. As their car pulled away, I felt neither triumph nor bitterness, but something like cautious hope mixed with the strength that comes from finally standing in your truth. Whatever happened next, I knew I could trust myself to protect what mattered most: the well-being of my children and my own hard-won sense of worth. 6 months after my parents' surprise visit, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening as I was helping Maya with her science project. Madison's name flashed on the screen. The first direct contact since before her wedding. "It's your Aunt Madison," I told Maya, who looked up with surprise. "I should take this. Can you keep working on labeling the planets?" I stepped into the hallway before answering. Madison. The sound of muffled sobbing came through the line. "Amber, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Not what I had expected. "Are you okay? What's going on?" "Everything's falling apart," she choked out. "Bradley and I are separating." 9 months, Amber. Our marriage lasted 9 months. I leaned against the wall processing this information. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you safe? Where are you?" "I'm at Mom and Dad's. I moved back last week," Madison explained, her voice steadying slightly. "Bradley's been having an affair with his executive assistant." So cliché, right? And there was a prenup I barely read because I trusted him, and now I might not even get to keep my car, let alone any settlement. The situation sounded genuinely difficult, but I remained wary. Was this call merely because she needed someone now that her perfect life had crumbled? "That sounds really hard," I said carefully. "But Madison, we haven't spoken in nearly a year. You let Mom uninvite me from your wedding and never said a word about it." A fresh wave of tears came through the phone. "I know. I was horrible. I've been horrible to you our whole lives. Can we talk in person, please?" I hesitated, torn between self-protection and curiosity. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please, Amber. I need my sister." Those 4 words, "I need my sister," pierced through my defenses. How many times had I silently thought the same thing over the years? I can meet for coffee, I conceded. But just us. No mom or dad. We arranged to meet that weekend at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and our parents' house. After hanging up, I immediately called my therapist and scheduled a session for the following day. I needed perspective before seeing Madison. It's natural to be skeptical, Dr. Levine said when we discussed the upcoming meeting. Madison has never shown this level of vulnerability with you before. I feel like I should be glad her perfect life imploded, I admitted. But I'm not. I just feel sad for her. That's because you have empathy, Amber. Despite everything, you still care about your sister. So, you think I should meet with her? I think you should go in with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. This could be the beginning of a healthier relationship, or it could be a temporary dynamic shift because she needs support. Either way, protect yourself. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived on Saturday morning. Madison was already there, securing a table in the corner. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner with dark circles under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, instead of her usual perfect blowout. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice as I sat down. I said I would. I placed my purse on the table, creating a small barrier between us. So, you and Bradley. Madison nodded, fidgeting with her coffee cup. 9 months of discovering I married a stranger. He was controlling about everything. What I wore, who I spent time with, how much I spent. When I confronted him about working late all the time, he didn't even try to hide the affair. Said I was boring and not the woman he thought he was getting. Despite everything, my heart ached for her. No one deserved that kind of betrayal. That's awful, Madison. Truly. She looked up, tears threatening again. Do you remember when James cheated, how I acted like it was somehow your fault? God, I was such a bitch? I had no idea how much it hurt. The explicit acknowledgement of her past behavior caught me off guard. Why were you like that with me? I asked directly. Not just about James. Our whole lives. Madison stared into her coffee for a long moment before answering. Jealousy, if you can believe it. You probably think I'm insane for saying that. Jealous. Of what? Of you, Madison said simply. Your freedom. Your creativity. The way you always knew who you were. I nearly choked on my coffee. Madison, you were the golden child. You had everything. I had everything our parents wanted me to have, she corrected. Every accomplishment was just meeting the minimum expectation. Every award was, of course that's what Wilsons do. Nothing was ever enough. But they adored you, I protested. They still do. Madison shook her head slowly. They adore who they shaped me to be. The perfect daughter who checks all the boxes. Do you know I never wanted to go into finance? I wanted to study marine biology. Dad talked me out of it. No future in studying fish, he said. This was a version of Madison I'd never imagined existed. The sister I'd envied my entire life had been living in her own kind of cage. When you got pregnant with Maya, I was secretly impressed, she continued. You were living life on your terms, consequences. Be damned. I've never been brave enough to do that. It wasn't bravery, I said. It was circumstance and then making the best of it. That's bravery to me, Madison insisted. And watching you as a mother, you're so natural with your kids. They adore you. You know who they actually are, not who you want them to be. We talked for hours, ordering second coffees and then lunch. Madison shared her side of our childhood. The crushing pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing our parents, the way she'd internalized their values until she couldn't separate her own desires from their expectations. I was awful to you about the wedding, she admitted. Mom was freaking out about appearances with Bradley's family, and I just went along with it. Like I always do. You could have stood up for me, I pointed out. I know. I should have. By the time I realized how wrong it was, it felt too late to fix it. And then everyone who actually matters in the family boycotted anyway. She gave a humorless laugh. Karma, I guess. It wasn't about karma, I said. It was about right and wrong. Family stands up for family. Madison nodded slowly. I want to be that kind of family to you now. If you'll let me. I understand if it's too late. I thought carefully before responding. It's not too late, but it's not going to happen overnight either. Trust has to be rebuilt. I'd like to meet your kids again. Really meet them, not just the awkward holiday visit version. The request was sincere, but it triggered my protective instincts. They're not emotional support animals, Madison. They're children who've been hurt by your actions too. I know, she said quickly. I want to be a real aunt to them. The kind who knows their favorite colors and books and shows up for school plays. After our coffee shop marathon, I consulted with Dr. Levine again before making any decisions about Madison's role in our lives. Start small, she advised. Short visits, specific activities. Watch how she interacts with the children and how they respond to her. 2 weeks later, Madison came over for Saturday morning pancakes, a weekend tradition in our house. She arrived with carefully chosen gifts for both children, a space-themed Lego set for Liam and a professional art kit for Maya, showing she'd paid attention to their interests during our conversations. Initially, the kids were reserved around her, especially Maya, who remembered more clearly the disappointment of being excluded from the wedding. But Madison was patient, getting down on the floor to help Liam with his Legos and asking Maya genuine questions about her artwork. You're really good at mixing colors, she told Maya, admiring a watercolor painting. I could never get the hang of that. I could teach you, Maya offered tentatively. It's not that hard. That small moment of connection was the beginning. Over the following months, Madison became a regular presence in our lives. She'd moved to an apartment in a neighboring town, taking a break from finance to figure out what I actually want to do with my life, as she put it. Her relationship with our parents was strained. They can't understand why I'm not immediately diving back into dating to find husband number 2, she confided after a particularly difficult family dinner. Mom actually said I'm depleting my market value by taking time for myself. Welcome to the disappointment club, I said dryly. We have t-shirts. Madison laughed, then grew serious. How do you do it? Live your life without constantly seeking their approval. Therapy, I answered honestly. And realizing that my children were learning from watching me. I didn't want them to grow up thinking their worth depended on someone else's validation. As summer turned to fall, we tentatively planned a Thanksgiving dinner together. My little family, Madison Catherine, who was flying in from Chicago, and Grandma Elise, who insisted on coming despite my mother's disapproval. My parents were invited, but declined, choosing to spend the holiday with Bradley's parents despite the divorce proceedings, appearances still paramount. The gathering wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments and old patterns that threatened to reassert themselves. But there were also new connections, forming genuine laughter and the beginning of what family could be when built on authenticity rather than expectations. Watching Madison help Maya set the table, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The sister I'd envied and resented was becoming someone I might actually choose as a friend. The wound of exclusion from her wedding had scabbed over, not forgotten, but no longer raw. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, Madison and I sat on my small balcony with glasses of wine. Do you think we can ever truly fix things with Mom and Dad? She asked, voicing the question that lingered between us. I considered this carefully. I think we can have a different kind of relationship with them. One with boundaries and realistic expectations, but they may never be the parents we needed them to be. Madison nodded slowly. I'm starting to accept that. It's sad, but also freeing in a way. Exactly, I agreed. And in the meantime, we're creating something new, something better. She raised her glass in a small toast. To something better. As we clinked glasses, I felt a sense of peace that had nothing to do with forgetting the past and everything to do with choosing the future. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't about pretending the hurt never happened. It was about not allowing that hurt to determine what came next. 1 year to the day after receiving that devastating text message from my mother, I stood in the community center where I taught weekly art therapy classes for single parents. The walls were covered with vibrant paintings, expressions of grief, hope, resilience, and healing from people who understood the unique challenges of raising children alone. What had begun as my personal coping mechanism had evolved into something meaningful for others. My background in photography and personal experience with therapy had merged into this program that was now funded by a local arts grant. I was still taking portrait sessions to pay the bills, but this work fed my soul in a different way. These are really good, said a deep voice behind me. I turned to find Alex, the center's building manager, admiring a particularly powerful piece. A woman standing strong amidst a storm, 2 small figures sheltered behind her. They are, I agreed. Patricia painted that one. She's been coming to class for 3 months now. Alex nodded appreciatively. "You've created something special here, Amber." His kind eyes crinkled when he smiled, a warmth spreading through me at the genuine admiration in his gaze. We'd been cautiously dating for 2 months. Coffee after my classes had evolved into family outings with the kids, then to actual dates with a sitter. He was patient with my trust issues, respectful of my priorities as a mother, and remarkably good at making both Maya and Liam dissolve into giggles. "Thanks," I said, still uncomfortable with praise but learning to accept it. The funding renewal meeting went well. "We're set for another year." "I never doubted it," Alex replied, helping me gather my supplies. "Still on for the park this weekend, I found this book of cloud experiments Liam might like." The casual way he remembered my son's current science obsession made my heart swell. This was what support felt like. Not grand gestures or temporary attention, but consistent thoughtfulness. At home that evening, I watched Maya help Liam with his homework at the kitchen table. At 8 and 6, they were thriving in ways that made me deeply proud. Maya had overcome her early reading struggles with the help of a wonderful teacher and was now devouring books above her grade level. Liam's natural curiosity had found an outlet in science experiments, his shyness giving way to enthusiasm when sharing his discoveries. My phone pinged with a message from Catherine, now a regular presence in our lives. She was planning her next visit, eager to attend Maya's upcoming school play. The easy relationship she had built with my children showed what healthy family connections could look like. No judgment, no impossible standards, just genuine interest and affection. Madison had settled into a new career path, teaching business classes at a community college while pursuing a master's degree in education. She came for dinner at least once a week, and had become the aunt she'd promised to be. Remembering birthdays, showing up for important moments, and building individual relationships with both children. My parents, well, that relationship remained complicated. After our confrontation, they had made sporadic efforts at change. Some visits went reasonably well with moments of genuine connection. Others slipped back into old patterns of criticism and comparison. I had learned to set clear boundaries, ending conversations or visits when they became unhealthy, making my expectations explicit rather than hoping they would magically understand. The hardest lesson had been accepting that my parents might never fully change, and that I could still choose limited contact rather than no contact. For the children's sake, and for the moments when glimpses of potential connection shone through, I maintained the relationship but with firm guardrails. "Mommy, can you check my math?" Maya called from the table, interrupting my thoughts. As I reviewed her multiplication problems, I marveled at how far we had come. The text message that had once shattered me had ultimately been the catalyst for profound growth. The wedding I hadn't attended had freed me to build the life and relationships I actually wanted, rather than chasing approval I might never receive. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I opened my laptop to respond to Catherine's message and noticed an email from my mother. The subject line read simply, "Thinking of you." The body contained just a few lines. "Saw this article about a photography award and thought of you. You always had an eye for capturing what others missed. Hope you and the children are well." Attached was a link to a prestigious photography competition. It wasn't an apology or a dramatic declaration of changed perspectives, but it was acknowledgement, recognition of my talent that had so rarely been voiced before. A small but significant step. I thought about how to respond eventually, settling on a simple thank you and a recent photo of the kids at the community garden. Not overly enthusiastic, not coldly distant, just authentic. As I closed my laptop, I reflected on the lessons of this difficult year. Blood relation doesn't guarantee healthy love. The family we're born into isn't always capable of providing the support and acceptance we need. Sometimes we have to build our chosen family from friends, partners, and the relatives who see our true worth. Children learn from watching boundaries being set. By standing up for myself, I was teaching Maya and Liam that they deserved respect, that love shouldn't require erasing yourself or accepting poor treatment. Forgiveness is for personal peace, not others' comfort. I had forgiven much of the past not to excuse it, but to free myself from its weight. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue. Some relationships need distance to be healthy. The limited, boundaried contact with my parents was working precisely because I no longer expected what they couldn't give. I could appreciate the positive moments without being devastated by the disappointing ones. Personal worth isn't determined by others' approval. Perhaps the most crucial lesson: I was enough exactly as I was. My children were enough. Our little family was complete and valuable without external validation. Breaking generational patterns requires courage. By refusing to perpetuate the dynamics I'd grown up with, I was creating a different future for Maya and Liam. They would know they were loved for who they were, not what they achieved or how they made me look. Looking back at that text message, "Don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward." I could now see it for what it was: the most painful gift I never knew I needed. A catalyst that forced me to confront family patterns I might otherwise have continued to endure, seeking approval I might never have received. The healing wasn't complete. There would always be tender spots, moments of sadness for what might have been occasional pangs when I saw other families with seemingly easier relationships. But I had found something precious in the aftermath of rejection, authentic connection with those who valued me as I was, and the strength to protect what mattered most. As I tucked the blanket around Liam, who had kicked it off as usual, and checked on Maya sleeping peacefully with a book still clutched in her hand, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Our little family had weathered a storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected. Have you ever experienced rejection that eventually led to something better in your life? Sometimes, the most painful moments can become unexpected turning points if we're brave enough to learn from them. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so others who might be struggling with family dynamics can find it too. Remember, you're not alone, and your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Thank you for being here with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.